if I were to whittle down what we're doing into two words, I would say political organizing. And those are relatively mundane words. And it's my hope that by the end of this evening, those words mean something a little bit more profound to you. Because to me, that's an extremely profound combination of words. Somewhere along the way, we have made politics become synonymous for vying for power and bickering and arguing and money and control. So these are the things we associate with politics. But politics comes from the root word polis, which is from the Greek, a reference to city or one city, or a place that one calls home. And politics is that willingness, to not just take care of your own farm, but to actually step up and to step forward because you love the place that you call home so much that you want to impact it. You want to influence it. You care about how things are for you and your countrymen and the land and the water and your children and your children's children. And so you're willing to do something about that. You're willing to bring your voice forward. You're willing to potentially get uncomfortable. You're willing to potentially go to battle, to defend and protect what's sacred to you. So this is really what politics is. This word is a profound, deep transmission in of itself. And we've belittled the energy by just assuming that it means something like bickering hypocrisy. But when we reclaim the energy that lives inside of that word politics, it's that willingness to provide stewardship to the place that you call home. And some of us might call home to the cities that we're from, or the states, or the countries. And many of us call home to this planet, this beautiful world that we live in, inclusive of all people and all life. And so when I talk about politics tonight and going forward, and when we talk about a political party, create a new shelf in your brain so that you can understand that we're talking about bringing together and networking and organizing those who feel that love for this place burning so brightly in their hearts that they're willing to step up and do something about it, bring their leadership forward, bring their stewardship forward. It's a party, it's a collective of people who feel that way. And organizing is what allows individuals who feel that way to come together, to be able to form a collective, right? Because our strength really comes in our numbers. And our power comes in the unity of our numbers. And so as we start to layer on this individual power, this individual sovereignty, this individual love, this ferocious stewardship, and that starts to become integrated with others who feel the same way, then now we've really started to move into approaching that integration of love and power through political organizing. And so that's what OneNation is about. OneNation is a space and a container to organize politically. It is to organize politically simultaneously in this kind of more expansive conversation around imagining a new era for humanity. And then actually grounding the pragmatics and the tactics of building that new era, right? So I didn't say anything about government just now. It's that kind of like expanded frame that simultaneously integrated with what we traditionally know as politics and government, right? So these things aren't disconnected. They're actually, we're bringing them together, right? Kind of like Tinkerbell sewing that shadow back onto Peter Pan. We're sewing together like the most lofty visions that we can possibly hold as heaven on earth, all the way into the policies and the budget allocations of our cities. And starting to bring those conversations together and integrate those. I'm guessing that many people in this room know that we're not going to change the world just by changing government. We're not just going to elect some new person. We're not just going to change some policy and then all of a sudden, coast is clear, we nailed it, we elected the right person. Because the most amount of power doesn't live in politics. Politics is kind of like the skeletal system, if you will, and then economics are like the muscular system, right? So if your skeleton's out of line, you can go to the chiropractor, you can readjust it. But if your muscular system is tweaked or contracted, it can pull that skeleton system right back out of alignment. So the muscular system is the thing that actually has more of an impact in your alignment. And so that's the economic system. So how we use resources, how we organize resources, how we think about resources, that's the thing that ultimately drives and impacts our politics. But our economic system isn't the end of the conversation, because there's no tweak that anybody could make to our economic system that would result in the full transformation. We can bring on benefit corporations, we can empower the nonprofit sector, we can inspire conscious capitalism, we can even shift our country's orientation to communism and socialism. There's no transformation we can make at the economic level that's going to solve the problems and challenges of our day, because what's stronger than the economic system is our cultural system. It's how we think. It's how we as individuals operate, and it's what we value. And so in order to create this massive transformation in the economic and the political system that I crave, and that so many of us crave, we have to bring our awareness into the transformations that we need to be able to create at a cultural level and an individual level with the man in the mirror, that then results in this ability for us to rise inside of our own cultural transformation and become the economic and governmental leaders of the future. And if you whittle this whole conversation around cultural transformation right into the center of the center of the center, a lot of experts identify that it's this win-lose, us versus them propensity that lives inside of all of us. It lives inside of us for very understandable genetic reasons. It's where we came from. We needed to be able to kind of have an us group and a them group, and that was how we survived all the way through this earlier stages of humanity, all the way through the earlier stages of civilization, all the way up until this moment. However, it's that same us versus them mentality that was actually fundamentally responsible for our survival, that at this stage in the game, we're actually transcending its relevance. So that which served us and helped our tribes and our civilizations to stay intact is now the very thing that could careen our whole human society off of many different cliffs simultaneously, right? With the scale of our weaponry, with the implications of artificial intelligence, with the magnitude of the ecological devastation, with the fact that all of our bloodlines are intermixed, with our communication and our travel. We've really reached this era where there's no other. And there's really one place called here and one group called us. But this is a very deep transformation to occur within our own psyches and with the psyches of others. And it's pretty easy to think that maybe we've arrived to that cultural transformation where we actually have kind of transcended that win-lose us versus them within ourselves. And we've arrived into what we call the all-win paradigm, or the holistic paradigm where we really genuinely want everybody to win. But the kind of litmus test is to check in with yourself who you're judging and who you're sure is wrong, or who you're sure is bad or evil or immoral. Therein lies where you two are still right inside that us versus them, feeling as righteous as any other person inside of that us versus them cultural dynamic, where you still kind of want your way, your better way to win, and want some other's inferior way to lose. And so what OneNation as a political party is holding space for is for individuals to go through the depth of the transformation process where we actually acknowledge and confront how that win-lose, us versus them mentality still lives within us, and how we can begin to actually heal and integrate that. So we can move off of this dualistic checkerboard of good and bad and into this all-win color wheel where we can actually move into an increased sophistication of thinking that allows us to finally meet the challenges of our day and begin to be the inventors of the solutions of where we go from here. And it's not just because it feels good and because it seems like the right thing to do, although I think many spiritual traditions will point to the virtue of what I'm speaking about. But it's even more nuts and bolts than that, because the quality of thinking available in that dualistic binary good-evil kind of frame, what I'll call the win-lose culture, is a level of sophistication that can process about this much complexity. Right? It starts breaking down because it can't entertain a deeper cut of the conversation. And that's kind of like what I call like conversational arithmetic. And when we move into what we're calling this all-win culture, it cracks open a whole new frame of being able to process reality at a cognitive level, as well as an emotional level, that then moves us into what I'm going to call political calculus or conversational calculus. We massively increase the sophistication of what's possible, right? So a little example of this is, let's imagine that everybody came here with one food ingredient, carrots or onions or celery or whatever you've got. And everybody's job here is to argue with each other who's got the better ingredient and that everybody should eat what they have, right? Because that's kind of the quality of the discourse we see in the win-lose political narrative. It's like, this is the thing, everybody should have it, everybody should get it, it's clearly the best thing, why don't you get it? We should all be eating celery. And now imagine for a second that we kind of get off of that checkerboard where I've got the right thing and you've got the inferior thing, and we move onto the color wheel, right? We move onto this like full range of infinite possibility. And instead of that win-lose, we're going for all-win. And in the all-win, we all have something meaningful to contribute. And so now we actually start to ideate together what we can make, what meal we can make together if we all bring our piece forward, right? And the level of complexity and the level of quality of the meal that we would create together with 25 different ingredients is the level and quality of thinking that's superior to what we can be thinking about in the political win-lose narrative, right? And we're at a moment in time where the challenges that we're dealing with, they're not only complex, but they're really critical. Everything's kind of becoming a really big deal, if you know what I mean. And the opportunities that are on the cusp for humanity are also fantastic. And we just get stuck when we're trying to process as a society the depth of the complexity of our issues with this previous quality of political conversation and discourse. And so to go to being and acting as one nation, as a concept, right? I love this one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Like, I love that. And it's like, it's rooted kind of right in this, like, this pledge. But our political system, because of the quality of the culture that we bring to it, it can't hold one nation. So it's boom, it's division and division and division and division and division. And we've created in our external reality a mirror of our internal experience, right? That disintegration, those divisions, the separation, the binary, the obsession over duality. So we need to and get to have a spiritual and intellectual and personal healing and development and evolution process as a prerequisite for us to taste what is this whole one nation thing even all about? Like, what would it look like if our political leaders didn't have to pit an other group in order to create their own relevance? Like, what if we had our political leaders that were talking about all people, all perspectives, all forms of life, all considerations on a particular topic, right? Because when we're inside the win-lose, we have this weapon, we have this tool that we use. It's called the opinion, right? And the opinion is basically I've stopped learning about a topic. That's what the opinion is. I'm not learning anymore. And boom, 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 and we're just boom, boom. We're fighting with these opinions, but by being inside of the win-lose kind of opinion frame, we've stopped learning. And therefore, we have a fraction of the information we need to actually make good decisions. When we go into this kind of like all-win culture, when we kind of arrive into that place, then we transcend this obsession over opinion, and we actually replace it with something more like an obsession over inquiry. And so we actually move into this space of, holy smokes, how can I get more information about this topic? How can I get more information on this topic? How can I get more information on this topic? Well, it turns out the way we get more information on a topic is by taking multiple perspectives and by arriving into the ability to be able to see a particular topic for multiple perspectives. And to say, great, what would this kind of Democrat, liberal, progressive perspective on this topic be? And why? What are the relevant, virtuous considerations here? What would a more conservative perspective be on this particular topic? What are the virtuous, intelligent, important considerations on this topic? There are relevant perspectives on every side of every topic. And if we are writing off any perspective as just totally inferior, then we are missing a critical ingredient that we need in our own leadership to be able to chart the best path forward. And so in order to kind of come into this all-win paradigm, we articulate these 4 core concepts of the individual journey. The first is we have to learn how to think for ourselves. We actually have to become sovereign in and of ourselves. We have to understand how we've been manipulated, and we need to rise above that manipulation. So we have to think for ourselves. We have to have our own perspective. Once we have that, then we have to learn how to set aside from that perspective in order to see things from other perspectives. So we move into multiple perspectives. Once we have multiple perspectives, now we can consider issues holistically, which is this obsession over inquiry. So we keep gaining more and more and more insights on a particular topic, which is position us better and better and better to provide meaningful leadership on the issue. And that sets us up for this sacred ability that we have to begin generating better all-win solutions. All-win solutions for our communities, for our cities, for our states, for our nations and for our humanity. And the vision that we hold is that those that are stepping into leadership and stewardship as our generation rises are holding this all-win perspective, and that we've actually inculcated and initiated ourselves with the ability to bring these 4 primary characteristics into any position of leadership or stewardship that we find ourselves in, whether that's the CEO of a company or the mayor of a city or the governor, and anything and everything in between. And it's this transformation at an individual level and a cultural level that's fused together with a commitment to step into leadership and stewardship that lends to the possibility of us enacting and overseeing and midwifing a full systemic transformation for our nation and for our world. And that's really what this is all about, because there's no incremental change that will do. We need to know the distinction between what's adequate and what's inadequate. And at the current American political conversation, there's not one adequate agenda item. There's no agenda item that if we just nail it as a country, if we just get that thing right, then dodged the bullet, we made it. No, we have a financial situation. We have a potentially massive financial collapse on our future. We have a massive ecological collapse in our future. We have massive concerns with how we use the exponential technologies that we are inventing as a humanity, including artificial intelligence. We could absolutely blow ourselves up with nukes like that. So there's a long list of things that help us to realize that what we're focused on at a national political agenda are all inadequate, which means we have to abandon those conversations rapidly. We have to actually pull our awareness, pull our attention, pull our resource away from an inadequate set of conversations so we can start having an adequate set of conversations. And in this adequate set of conversations, the only thing that matters is everything. The only thing that matters is everything, and the only one that matters is everyone. So if we're not having conversations that actually impact everything and everyone, we're not adequate, because that's where we're at right now in this arc in humanity's storyline. And so it's systemic transformation. It's the systemic transformation of how we do society, how we do organization of the material world, how we do economics, how we do governance. What do these things even mean? What is money? What is community? What is food? Right? We have these big questions that we need to be able to answer right now. And these are the adequate questions. They're also the harder questions. They're also the questions that are impossible to be able to answer inside of the win-lose quality of thinking. And they're also the conversations that the vast majority of those that currently hold power don't want us to be having. Right? They're wanting us to be thinking about how do we create Medicare for all. That's actually what they want us to be thinking about. And in the moment that seems kind of virtuous, but you click in a little bit more and you realize that our healthcare system is actually kind of the sick care system that kind of systematically makes people more sick while extracting life force energy and maximizing profits to those that own the shares in these companies. And we don't want more people to be popping more pills. That's not actually the world that we want to create. So if that's the conversation we're having, it's an inadequate conversation, despite the fact that there's some marginal virtue available in that conversation. Right? So how do we create healthy people? How do we create health for all? That's the conversation. It's 1,000 times more complex than how do we create Medicare for all. But this is the conversation that matters. It's not just what do we do at our border. It's what's our relationship to human dignity. How do we create human dignity for all? And how do we create a world that keeps developing people that are connected to their own dignity and the dignity of all other people. This isn't just a conversation around better clean energy technology. It's a conversation around how have we objectified nature? How have we completely abused the sacred relationship to we have the place that we call home? How do we regenerate our crippled ecosystems? How do we create a dignification for life that lives inside of us so that the thousands and thousands and thousands of companies that are operating are being operated by people that hold that sense of dignification for all life in their hearts and their minds? These are the depths of the conversations that we need. And as political leaders, as people who care about politics, as we care about this place so much, we have to bring those conversations forward. So, what does it look like for us to begin to weave together a network of people who care and are aligned with this topic? What does it look like for us to say, sayonara to the old way of doing things with one part of our awareness, and let's integrate with how things are exactly as they are with another part of our awareness. So we're fully integrated with the vast possibility that we can hold in our minds with reality exactly as it is. There's a phrase that's been used in business: embrace, expand, innovate. It's a phrase that's usually used for like moving into new markets or developing new markets. Right? So that's our challenge. It's to not take these big ideas and then just go off into a commune in Costa Rica with our own kind of permaculture gardens and solar panels and be like, yeah, we did it. It's realizing we have to fully embrace, right? Fully embrace the world as it is, right? Anyone who's done any improv training, yes and, right? Yes and, right? Whatever the member of your company does, cool. Like, I thought that we just said was stupid, but if I sit here and be like, then the energy drops. But I'm like, okay, cool, I'm going to roll with that. We yes and if you yes and your partner on that stage, you decide where it goes next. So we need to yes and yes the system. And that's what gives us the position, the admission ticket for us to decide where this goes next. Right? So OneNation is about those who are realizing that creating their own microcosm of a Garden of Eden isn't actually the fullest expression of their soul's purpose on this planet. OneNation is an invitation for us to get what we need from that microcosm of Garden of Eden, and then let's get back in the game as is. And government is like the densest thing we've got. So if we can bring this conversation and this light and this energy and this frequency and this heart and point it right into government, we're going to get everything in between if we're willing to penetrate that density. I love the last scene of The Matrix, right? Neo, Agent Smith, the whole time he's running from agents. Oh, you can't beat the agents. All you can do is run from them. This is what everyone told him, right? And then finally Neo's like, wait a second. What if all this time I've had an aversion to something that actually is more accessible than I realized, right? So if you've seen that scene, he stops running, he turns around, he looks the agent square in the face. The agent shoots him with a bunch of bullets, and he's like, actually, this isn't that big of a deal. He navigates that, and then he stops running, and he stops fighting. But he doesn't just join him. He enters in to Agent Smith. and splinters them into light from the inside out. So what if there really is an intelligence that's organizing this world? And what if that intelligence knows exactly what it's been doing as it's creating these things called governments that we've all found our own aversions to in whatever ways we have? What if the structures of our cities and our states and our nations are actually our birthright to steward? What if it actually is our inheritance? What if this is a moment in time for us to leverage all of the organizational systems that have been created, all of that power that's been built together through police force and military and taxation and policy and enforcement and all of that as just a big administrative capacity? And life is saying, here you go. Here's the keys. If you want to organize, it's yours. These cities that have $100 million, billion-dollar budgets, they're ours. If we're ready, if we're willing to organize, if we're willing to believe that's possible, if we're willing to stop running and say, you know what, maybe we should give this all-win paradigm inside of City Hall a go and see what's possible. Maybe we could use the cities to actually ground the regenerative processes and technologies and visions that many of us hold as blueprints of the future. Maybe the cities are the context and the terrain for us to start to roll these things out for humanity. So as a political party, we do this very mundane, grounded thing, which is we organize in a particular way and we secure ballot access, which means that every elected official, OneNation party has a candidate for. Pretty simple stuff. And then as the conversation is right now, we see how many votes we can get. Pretty simple stuff. So it's like holding both the scale of this complexity and this power and this vision that we hold with being willing to do this very simple, straightforward, mundane functions and bringing that all together. And I do believe that we can, in fact, become the governmental leaders of the future. Every single person in this room, if you want to, if you feel that calling, could step into a position of stewardship that you don't have to create for yourself. You don't have to create your own company. You don't have to create your own nonprofit. Venice is already here, right? Los Angeles is already here. So there's these huge organizations that are already created that we can just step into as the city councils, as the treasurers, as the sheriffs, as the governors, as the state reps, as the national reps, as the presidents and prime ministers of this world. Where does the rubber hit the road? We're launching this party. We've just gotten into a spec of the conversation tonight. We are going through a methodical launch plan. This is what we call phase 3. We're having meetings like this almost night to night all around the country in different cities. We're building the network one person at a time. And we're moving into 2020. And in 2020 and the end of 2019, we go public. And we launch the party in a very robust, provocative way through a very energized campaign. Right now, we're kind of calling it the All-Win Rebirth campaign. It's a national and planetary campaign where we're initiating ourselves and the general public into this transition from a win-lose culture and paradigm into an all-win culture and paradigm. We're initiating our general awareness from topics that we focus on as political narrative and agenda items to systemic. So we're kind of cracking open this wide conversation and we're putting the bat signal out so that we can organize politically. And we can find both how many millions of Americans are ready. They're right here. They don't need to be convinced. We don't need to have the conversation of, but how do we convince people who, let's have that conversation after we find out how many people don't need to be convinced and get them all in one network and all in one room. And then see what influence is in that room and how we can translate that message to every nook and cranny of society that room already has influence over. And I would love to end 2020 with at least 1 million people in this network in the States, and this consciousness and this energy beginning to ground and be fostered and cultivated all around the world. So we can actually really have a global political rebirth where we move from the existing systems and structures that have driven us into what can happen next. In 2022, we run a fun and exciting national mayoral campaign. We light up the ballots with a new generation of mayors. We see how many dozens or hundreds of this next generation of mayors we can move into office. And with every campaign, we build the movement. And with every elected official that we have an electoral outcome with, we enrich the existing government with a new set of values. Because that's the job of a political party. It's to animate the relatively benign government with a particular set of values, a particular personality, a particular orientation. So if we're not going to infuse that orientation into government, who is? And what's motivating them? And what are we leaving on the table by not going all in? And so at the end of the day, this is about providing American leadership towards planetary stewardship. And I believe that's our destiny. And thank you for listening and receiving that tonight.